Hi, guys. Welcome back. I'm actually playing hooky to be here because obviously I just came back from Texas, but there's so much going on. Every time you turn around, there's another headline, another story. Even with this new indictment of the organization that the Democrats were defending, calling others racist or hate groups, while at the same time funding things that don't match what they say, does it? That was pretty I was dumbfounded. I was like, how can these people do that? But they do. Then I heard today, I don't know if anybody's heard about this, a child that the father must be the trans, and he took his kid from the mother to give him gender transformation, whatever. I don't even know if the kid was a boy or a girl because it's so vague. But he took him, kidnapped him basically, and went to Canada, and then from Canada to Cuba for a gender transformation or transitioning of some sort. And you start seeing things differently because even Cuba government knew something was wrong with these people and kind of gave the USA the heads up because, again, they kidnapped her child. So how bad could this family or this particular person crazy be that even the Cuban government said, wait, we want nothing to do with this? I mean, this is some serious shit. And then the Virginia thing with the um, changing the map around, I call it with the crayon, just changing it around as they see fit. Now, Supreme Court, this was Tuesday, today is what, Thursday? The Supreme Court said, hey, wait a second, that's not allowed. So they stepped in and shut it down. But again, it's just another way of Democrats pushing the envelope. And if the Supreme Court had been compromised, and again, we don't know anymore of these judges because some of them or most of them are in the Democratic pockets. The only way to say it, I don't know what they have, how the deal works. But again, this was the Supreme Court of Virginia, who we just got lucky, I suppose, that whoever the judges are, that they saw this for what it was. So anyways, there's a lot. There's just so much. But if you haven't done so, please do so. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Barbie Unfilter 67 because I try to stay current daily with some of these things. And by the time I do my show, I try to stick to the ones that got me most upset or most again, the ones that got to me personally. I try not there's not enough time. There's not enough. I would have to do an hour show and I'm not there yet. Again, I'm just getting comfortable with the videotaping and talking, and it is a process. I'll tell you that much. It is a process. But at the end of the day, there's only so much I could bring out by the end of the week with everything. The news cycle just moves so fast. So that's kind of where I'm at. To me, it feels like dominoes falling with the Democratic Party. They're just constantly falling. And at the end of the day, I believe God will prevail, hopefully. Because this same organization that they got caught, they were telling Turning Point USA that they were a hate group. I don't know where they got their information, but again, this was to get donors to donate. So in order to keep the organization going, instead of saying, hey, you know what, there's not that much racism anymore, we're done, I think we destroy the KKK if there's any of them around. But they couldn't. They had to continue the lie in order for those to donate money. I think the only organization that I have ever donated money to in my lifetime has been, aside from GoFundMe pages, has been Turning Point USA. But I don't know. Again, I've always said it, the American people are very generous. Just make sure that you know who you are supporting and who you are giving your hard-earned money. If you're wealthy, then that's a different story because they always need a write-off. But again, that depends on what they believe in. So what can I say, man? It is what it is. So, but a lot of you have been telling me And I'm not an idiot. I see it on my views, especially on YouTube. And again, if you haven't done so, please follow me. And for the record, again, this is very new to me. So I will get this is all practice, but at the same time, I am telling my story. And a lot of you have been telling me that, oh my God, can we get back to your story? Yeah, we can. But I'm always going to be somewhat bring some political views into this when it aligns with some of the stuff I went through. Because again, I was never into politics. So with no further delay, let's get back to my story. So, when I got to this country, I gave my headaches and my heartbreaks, but I never told you how I got there. Things started getting out of hand for me around age 13. But before all that, I had a lot of fun too as a child. Again, I had at least 3 years of family hanging out and getting to know my family and getting to know this new country I was in. I had friends, yes, they were all into drugs, but light drugs. But at the time, that was my crowd. I started skipping school early, and that's how it all started. My first drug of choice was Quaaludes. I even had a friend whose dad was making them at home, and even with the presser. I didn't know you could make those pills at home. But nevertheless, I had a friend who had the hookup. And from there, it just kept going. I was in detention probably half the time once I left elementary school. Back in the days, the kids don't even know how good they have it now. But back in the days, I don't know if those of you who are my age, the principals always had a paddle in the office. And I got paddled multiple times in school. I remember the time that my mom found out I was taking a shower and she asked me when I was drying up and she saw my booty and she asked me why it was so red. And it was literally the shape of the paddle. I had not even noticed it. She was the one that noticed it. So that's when my parents knew I was getting into some trouble at school. And they were very, oh my God, I can't believe they could do that. Like they didn't hit me. But regardless, that's how she found out. Then from there, she didn't want to tell my dad because if telling my dad would bring me another ass whooping. So, but she realized that things were a little nuts at school. And then I said, she asked me why. And I said, Mom, they give you an option. They say either you get paddle or we call your parents. So I always took the paddling. If not, it was detention, which again, I was constantly in there. It got worse, fights. Again, think about it. Look at how bad my English is now. Back then, it was worse. And I had people that I just didn't fit in. There was not as much, what should I say? There was not as much immigrants around for me to, hang around with the Spanish crowd or no. I was literally forced to hang around. And I went to South Miami High School, which again, I didn't even pass. I dropped out really, I think 8th grade because things just kept getting worse. The fights, I got caught with drugs. They tried putting me in a second chance school, which this was what did it for me because I knew that even for me, I knew I wouldn't survive that place. That place was filled with gambangers, and obviously it was opportunity school. So my parents were losing it. They were losing it so much that they wanted to lock me up in a mental institution because they thought I was crazy, but they didn't speak a word of English. So I took advantage of that and I made up stories, whatever worked for me at the time. But before everything went completely off the rails, I had some really good memories. We used to own a boat and we would pack that boat every Friday like clockwork so we could take off on Saturday. And then we would go scuba diving, all those water sports, skiing. There was an island between Miami and Bimini. And I might be saying it wrong and I don't remember. So if anybody in Spanish out there knows this, you could give it to me. I call it Elioqui, but we would pack up on Fridays, head out there, I remember them tying all the boats together. It was a huge party. All the kids partied. We did a lot of water stuff together. I literally, I'm not kidding you. When I see those pictures of back in the day, I look like a little black girl because that's how dark I was. But they tie the bows together and they party all night. Obviously, I didn't know how the adults could stay up all night, but they did. And for the most part, we would come back on Sunday and then, my dad had a job at the jewelry store. My mom was a homemaker at the time, and we would do it all over again. And I did like school at first, but it got a little complicated, especially because of the language barrier. Like I said, there was not that many people that I could hang out with or whatever. And I was not put in any special class either. Did have, like a kind of like a tutor at first, but that didn't last long. And I was forced to move on. My only great subject was math. That I remember being really good at because the math that I came with from Cuba was so much more advanced than the math that they were doing here in the school. So I do remember that. And again, I felt that I was super smart or whatever. But then when it came back to the language, it was just was very frustrated. But those were really good times. It wasn't all terrible. And my family was a lot of fun. The parties were a lot of fun. Um, and I had a really good childhood, just didn't last very long. And probably because of me. Once I convinced my parents that I was old enough for a social life, it took off. I loved it. But even then, I pushed the envelope every chance I got. I stayed out later, not doing what I was supposed to do. So, I just kept pushing it. At some point, I made up my mind that I needed to leave home to do whatever I wanted. I also remember a lot of when it was like bad weather over the weekend and we didn't get out to the boat. My second thing was roller skating. My God, I love that. And I used to go roller skating a lot. My parents used to drop me off and pick me up, but I always had to watch my little brother. And that was a pain in the neck for me. But it was a lot of fun until it wasn't anymore, like everything else. So I made up my mind, okay, this is not working for me. I was getting my ass in trouble in school and I was getting my ass in trouble at home with my dad by pushing the envelope. And my dad was very, very strict. In today's world, he would be a child abuser because that's how strict my household was. And I just couldn't deal with it. I'm not giving myself a pass. I was out of control. My parents tried everything they could. And looking back now, I see we're just doing what they knew. My mom didn't know much affection. She came from a big family, I think altogether 7 girls, 2 boys. And my dad was harsh. He was just harsh. His father was a police officer, my grandpa, and he was just very strict. That was normal for them back. Like I said, in today's world, child protective service would have been in my house. But it opened the door for me to leave. My friends took me in, especially if I showed up with any bruises. Oh my God, Barbie, poor thing, Barbie. And their parents would take me in, feed me, clothe me. I did this for many, many, well, it looked like many, many years, but it felt very long for me. I remember having a boyfriend who had his mother. He couldn't take me to their parents were divorced. He couldn't take me to his dad's house, but he could take me to his mother. And I lived there a lot and then party with him quite a few too. So I somehow lucked out with the people that I call it luck, but looking back, it wasn't. It was just taking advantage of my youth, and back then it was just more acceptable sort of thing. So it was really really weird. But anyways, that's how I got around, and that's how I moved from house to house, and never really had like my own clothes. And when I did, it was probably in a garbage bag because again, I didn't know where I would be at any given day. I mean, I lied so much that I actually called my dad not too long ago and say, "Hey, Dad, I was watching a show. I don't know if you guys have seen it. where they do the lie detector test, kind of like the one where I forgot his name, but the one, so sir, they take a lie detector test or a DNA test. Sir, that is not your baby or whatever. And there's a news show that we were looking at, and I said, I'd never had any faith on lie detector tests because I swear I passed one and I lied right through them. I'm sure that they're not as good as they're those were not as good as they are now. So I wouldn't try to do that again. But I remember passing lie detector tests when I was clearly lying. So again, I'm not giving myself a pass. It was a very different world back then. I lied so much, like I said, that when I finally told the truth to my mom, for instance, on that show that I revealed that my mom thought I was lying, she really thought I was lying. I mean, and it was something very personal, and it was a big deal. I, I'm not giving her a pass either, but I understand how that played out. So I thought I was running with the best of the best. I really did. There was always someone using or selling. I never had a problem finding what I thought was the right crowd. I mean, I was like a magnet. I just brought all that crap into my life. Or because I was so lost, that was the only crowd that I could actually hang out with. But I had money, and I had jewelry galore, and drugs were everywhere. So doors just kept opening. And obviously, when you have those three things, the people want to hang out with you. Not so much for your friendship, but for what you can bring. And I knew a lot of people that either sold drugs or dealt drugs or whatever. So I never really had to buy drugs at the time. I thought that meant I was winning. I'm on top of the world, but I was spiraling. I wasn't a big drinker. I never did. I was a downer girl. And when I was introduced to cocaine, that was it for me. I turned into a full night person. Days were for sleeping and nights just kept going. School was then definitely over for me, and I was in full runaway mode. I felt like often talk about the movie Scarface, uh, especially with the Muriel and everything that they portrayed in that movie, but it felt like Scarface. Bigger dealers, more money, nonstop parties. I barely saw my parents anymore. I lost the friends who partied just, for fun on the weekends, and I had gone past that. My dad used to say something, tell me who you hang out with, and I'll tell you who you are. Well, that was my life. And till this day, I still use that with the kids. Again, and for all the children out there or your kids, I hope no kids watching this, but if you hang around with a nun, you'll soon be in church. And that was like how my dad portrayed it. If you hang around with a thief, chances are you'll become a thief. If you hang around with a druggie, chances are you're going to be a druggie or you're going to try it. And obviously, that was how it played out for me. The people that I hung out with that I thought were my friends, but in true honesty, I mean, looking back, none of those people are in my life. Some were lost their lives along the way due to drugs. And keep in mind, drugs back then were not as potent as they are now. Even the weed itself, I can't smell weed now a mile away, and I hate the smell of it. But back then, it was different. It was we used to call it skunk weed, but now it's like on steroids. So that was kind of my life. I mean, there is a lot of heartache, but there was a lot of good things in short years because I came from Cuba at 10 and my problems started happening at 13. I'm certain that it was after the Muriel, because everything changed and the dynamic in the household took a change and it changed with me too. And then when I came to my mom to bring her or tell her something that happened to me, and she didn't believe me, that just I spiraled out of control, and I just wanted to get out of that home and do whatever it took. But it's mostly, kinda like drugs, sex, and rock and roll. I don't even know. I used to listen my first group of friends were all heavy metal. I mean, we talk and heavy metal for me is not like heavy metal for some. Yeah, I'm talking about Metallica, Guns N' Roses, Poison, and those were the people music that we heard. And again, I thought maybe I could just hang out with these people and even my English would progress to, just singing along and stuff like that. It was all that I knew back then. There was a club that opened up in 107th Avenue called Metro 107. That did it for me. I would go there, and I had another boyfriend that was a guitar player, full of tattoos, head to toe. Um, and I thought maybe because he was a good guy, although he was a rocker and a druggie and played in a band. I also lived with him and his mom, so I literally kept getting these people that could take me to their homes, and because I didn't have a home, I would just move, like I said, with the trash bag, and that was my life. So that's kinda it. I mean, there was like I said, it's more like drugs, sex, and rock and roll, and that was. But then I met my first husband, and again, I thought maybe I can get my life together. He was older, and I know that he found me through a friend, and I have no idea how. I think we met at Metro 107, or we went to his house to buy drugs, one of the two. And it was like love at first sight, when you see somebody against and then the fact that he spoke Spanish and was Cuban, it was like, oh, wow. Okay, maybe I can get back to my roots here. And he pursued me and he wanted to get me out of that mess that I was in. And I said, I thought maybe I can get my life together. He was older. I followed him and my world shifted. Less rock and more Latin music, back to my roots. And I thought that was pretty neat. His family, again, welcomed me with open arms. Like I said in my prior video, he worked for Wells Fargo, and I kid you not, we would spend the entire day together. He would take me on his routes, and we ate lunch, everything on his routes. And then even he had a company vehicle, so the company never knew. But it was great. And his family was amazing. They loved him. He was an only child, so they loved him so much that, I mean, they opened their homes um immediately. They were not sure about my age, and I don't think we told them for a long time, but it was the first time I felt a little structure. I worked with him during the day and then we party on the weekends. And I thought, oh shit, this is the way that people do this. The party, well, the way that when I started partying, it was kind of like that, Monday to Friday school and then try to get out for the weekend. But my party got under control. So I felt like I had some structure. I thought we figured it out. But every now and then he still do some sort of drug deal and money would come in just as fast as it would go out. We would rent a hotel, stay there for the weekend, literally not leave the room for that entire week. And party, I guess, he had vacation days and stuff like that. So we took plenty of advantage. We took advantage of those vacation days. So that was that. We lived in his place at first, but there were always people in and out. So he was very protective of me. So he moved me in with his mom and stepdad. And that's when I started thinking maybe I can really get my life together. Maybe I could even bring my parents back into my life. But I had already been gone for about 2 years from my house. And I never once thought about that, what that did to them. I really didn't. Now, as a parent, I get it. I get it. Not knowing where your kids are, that hits different. And when I ask them now, how did they get through it? They said bad news travels fast. If anything happened to you, we would have found out. But still, that had to be a shitty 2 years for them, not knowing where I was at. I didn't even think about my little brother or what that did to him either. He looked up to me and I abandoned him and I left him there. I get it. I really do. And by the time I tried to bring my parents back into the picture, I was already pregnant. I said, okay, maybe now they're not going to be able to say anything. And like I said, not a lot of people knew the age difference. We kept that to ourselves. Um, and that's when I decided to see if I could get my parents back in the picture. And I did. But my mom and dad were also going through some struggles of their own. Again, when drugs are involved in any family, things happen. Just things happen. At the same time, the drug world was changing. Things were getting tighter. People were more careful. All that drug stuff was done under Carter. And I believe Reagan was the next president. And he was, remember, say no to drugs. Remember the commercial with the the egg in a pan. So yeah, I think they were cracking down. And remember, Florida was filled of Marielitos, that's what they were called back then. But Miami was a basket case. And I mean, drugs were just so easy and everywhere to get, or at least for me, because I knew the crowd. But things were getting tighter and people were more careful. By that time, I even kind of went down in the drug use, and because I was pregnant, and finally our first baby came home with us. And shortly after that, we moved in with my mom because my dad had left my mom, and she wasn't going to be able to afford that house. It was in 107th and Coral Way. No, I think so. And she wasn't going to be able to afford that house, and I thought, maybe we could help her out. Her marriage was over. She was trying to figure things out, but the truth is, I left a stable home to go back into chaos. At my husband's house, I had support. I had his aunts, I had his family, people willing and able to help me all day, whatever time I needed. And I went back to my mom, still looking for something from her, maybe validation. The problem was her life was falling apart too. And although all of this, my husband, Manny, loved me. He did everything he could for me, for the baby, for all of us. Once I realized that living with my mom wasn't working for me, we decided to get our own place. But by then, I was already pregnant with baby number 2. So we thought we have the baby by my mom's and then go out and get a place finally. Getting our own place felt like the right move. Like, okay, now we're really going to do this. It felt like, shit, now it's truly us. But then keep in mind, Manny had to keep his job and also do some drug deals here and there. We could not just get a house with 2 rooms. Now we needed, the girls could share the room, but shortly after that, my third pregnancy, well, I'll get to that later because otherwise my show will get too long and you'll get bored of me. But it felt like, okay, now we're really doing this. My first 2 kids were 11 months apart, Irish twins. That alone should tell you how fast my life was moving. No breaks, no time to really think. I was trying to play house, trying to be a mom, a partner, while still carrying all the chaos I never dealt. All the chaos. It looked like I was stepping into responsibility, but inside I was still that same girl. And even though getting our own place felt like independence, it also meant we didn't have the same support anymore. Now it was really on us. And this is where I start to look at everything. It's coming together, but in reality, everything underneath was still broken. So that's kind of where I'm at, guys. I will continue on my own journey for you guys. I'm going to try to edit this and put it out tomorrow, Friday. I might take a double take. I haven't looked at it. I'll check it out. And again, please like, follow, and share, especially with the YouTube. And again, I'm going to try to give you more of my story. There's a lot more without getting anybody in trouble. I guess that's my ring. I'll let you guys go. Have a great day and have a good weekend. Bye-bye.